Look, I didn't want to be neurodivergent. Picture me in middle school, an undiagnosed, misdiagnosed bundle of nerves. The eggshell brick walls of my middle school had started to grow tighter around me with each panic attack, each meltdown, any time I had gotten in trouble for feeling something. I'm serious. On 2 separate occasions, I had gotten detention for behaving erratically. And by that I mean walking out of a classroom during a panic attack. Swallowing it all back and getting the graduating superlative for most polite in 8th grade, where did I put it all? Well, when I was 10, 2 years before 6th grade, I met a boy. A boy named Percy Jackson. The meeting wasn't one-on-one. No, it would happen as I zoned out on the carpet of my 4th grade classroom for reading time. My teacher liked to read us a passage of a book every day, and usually this was the time I couldn't bring myself to focus. As she made it through the lightning thief, though, that changed. Something grabbed me. Was it because I was also in the middle of a Pop Tropica hyperfixation? And the Mythology Island had just dropped. And I was also furiously emailing my best friend at the time daily to help me get through the Golden Apple quest. Yeah, I don't know why she left me for the jocks. For those who have been living under a rock for the past 2 decades, Percy Jackson and the Olympians is a book series written by Rick Riordan. After his son was diagnosed with ADHD and dyslexia, like any good dad would, he wanted to make him feel like he wasn't weird. Or, what's more, the things that made him different made him godly. This story follows Percy Jackson, a 12-year-old who is also neurodivergent with ADHD and dyslexia, as he finds out exactly why his father left for Ambrosia and never came back. He's the son of the Greek god of the seas, Poseidon, and he's taken to a place where other kids like him reside, half human and half god, almost all neurodivergent, all kick-ass. At Camp Half-Blood, your ADHD that can't make you sit still, the ADHD that makes your mind race 1,000 miles per hour, is that restless warrior instinct in you. Your dyslexia that makes you feel isolated from your classmates and so frustrated at yourself. It's because your brain wasn't meant to understand this world and its words, it's hardwired for ancient Greek. I had started to read on my own after that. I was always good at reading, but I was never able to focus on full books. To my overactive, hyperactive brain, they felt like too much of a commitment. But by a year later, I was in a solid routine of like a book back to back. Some I remember vividly, like I made my 5th grade teacher, with the fucking patience of a saint, read out loud to my 5th grade class this book called School of Fear, which I think started my inclination toward the dark academia genre. It's exactly what it sounds. It's a bunch of kids who have these strange phobias and then they go to this school and it's exposure therapy. And of course, everyone hated it except for my best friend and writing partner and reading partner to this day. So I kept my reading to myself. Anyway, I bring this up because after a long year of reading in solitude, I was made aware of Tumblr. Jellybean Jules 44 had officially stepped onto the game and figured out what fandoms were as the release of the first Hunger Games movie garnered hype in early 2012. I breezed through the Hunger Games in order to understand all of these jokes and be in this community, and most importantly, set expectations for the movie, because I still, even at that age, was a budding cinephile. The Hunger Games created a gateway to more fandom communities, one of which bringing me back to an old acquaintance, Percy Jackson.
Look, it's Percy. His domain is in this file. What the heck? Making a video. I'm bored.
At this moment in time, the spin-off series books were being released, and all of these new characters that were not Percy, Annabeth, Grover, or Luke were painted across my dashboard. I was confused having them tagged with the PJO fandom. I caught on quickly, of course, and raced to finish the first series that year, my second half of 6th grade. I missed this guy, and I found a new community to fit into. On Tumblr, I was in on the joke. At school, I was popping Klonopin out of my sock on stage at our production of High School Musical because all of my friends were doing drama, and I had horrible stage fright, but I was so obsessed with the idea that middle school was going to tear us apart, so I did everything that they did. So I needed a distraction. As I had gotten through the Sea of Monsters and the Titan's Curse and so on, I felt myself seeing seen in a way that I'd never been seen before. I had my first "he's literally me" moment. Going back as far as I can remember, As a kid with a fully formed personality, Percy was the first character I related to. For the first time ever, I felt as I was understood. His dedication to feeling like there's something deeply wrong with him, that he's weird, that he's a spectacle almost. What is it the gay kids say nowadays? Always an angel, never a god. No matter how hard he tried to fit in, he just couldn't. He always stood out, for better or worse. Like him, my mouth had or has a tendency to move faster than my brain. And at that age, I started sowing the first seeds of what would be absolute resentment towards authority figures. Not even fucking Hurricane Sandy could keep me from breezing through what was like my best friend's diary on my Kindle. I would literally make my dad charge it in the car. The wind whipping outside as I held the lantern on the couch and stayed up way too late to finish each book in the series so I could catch up. Nothing could stop me from reading on. To know if he fought those monsters and gods and won, to know if he got the girl, to know if he was finally able to live a life understood. I even bought the House of Hades to a fucking wedding.
Percy Jackson. Having out hardcore Percy feels.
I couldn't stop in hindsight because I was living vicariously through him. I had my own monsters that needed slaying, and I still have a happy ending waiting for me, but I wasn't strong enough to do it on my own. I needed to know Percy, and I wouldn't even know it yet, but in knowing Percy, I would know myself. Percy Jackson understood me on a level that I wasn't even able to comprehend, and it would take almost 8 years to know why. Percy Jackson knew what was wrong with me before most of my psychiatrists were able to clock it. Well, that's not actually true. I'm looking directly at the therapist who told my parents I had brush strokes of autism and therefore not to worry about it. Fuck you, Jen. Because as I use these books in these traumatizing middle school years to escape, with a proper diagnosis and accommodations, I would not have needed to. And that does make me angry, but if I'm being honest, I don't think that would have changed the obsession. I'd still be racing to finish my history test so I could read the final chapter of Mark of Athena, which, by the way, I finished the Mark of Athena after a fucking final. And you know how when you used to take finals, because we're all old and decrepit, I'm assuming like me, they would make you wait until the whole classroom was finished to go. So I read the last chapter of Mark of Athena after I was done with my history test, and I had to sit for an hour with what I just read staring at the floor. For those who don't know, in the Mark of Athena, the two main characters who are at this point in a relationship fall into hell together. Actually, Annabeth was the one that fell first, and Percy loved her so much that he fell with her. So, if you want to talk about traumatizing experiences,
Best ending ever.
I had known I was ADHD from around 8th grade, but it took me almost 5 years after the fact to get neurodivergency is still severely under-researched in girls. I got my official ADHD diagnosis when I was 18. I got my official autism diagnosis on a whim when I was 21. My psychiatrist at the time just on a whim asked me if I was ever screened. I said no. He asked me questions. I said yes to almost all of them. He said, well, if he didn't have the thought in his head to randomly test me, I still don't think I would have ever known. I'd still think I was broken like Percy did before he learned all of these things about himself. And my parents were sadly unsure of what to do with the very, very different kid that they still loved so much. In empowering his own neurodivergent kid, Rick Riordan, by a happy accident, empowered an entire generation of them. Now, a special interest is a thing where multiple things autistic people tend to zero in on and be super passionate about. You already know mine by now, because I, for all intents and purposes, am a white female op-ed from Community. But along with TV and film, folklore and mythology are actually two of my special interests as well. But it all started with Greek mythology, and it started there at Percy Jackson. And I think if you ask any autistic person my age, a good percentage of them would answer that they also have a special interest in Greek mythology, and that it also started with Percy Jackson. It did come at a perfect time for me because in 6th grade, the history curriculum was about ancient civilization. So along with the culture we were learning about in that class, the English class would cover some of the folklore and mythology, which was, oh my god, that was so perfect for me. I think I got the highest grades ever that period in time because I was able to focus, and I was just so excited to learn about this shit. And you know, my teachers obviously knew about Percy Jackson because it was a phenomenon at that point in time. This was like 2012. And Camp Half-Blood, the camp where all the demigods are, is on Long Island, where I'm from. So they took total advantage of that. Once we learned all the myths, we were able to write about our favorite god. I wrote about Artemis. It's funny because I like women. And she remains my favorite goddess in all of mythology to this day. Yes, she did some heinous shit, but you will not find a Greek god who didn't. I always felt connected to her even when I got older and started reading more mythology books and learning more of the unsavory myths. Maybe it's the animal lover in me, maybe it's the nature lover in me, or the aspiring archer I never picked up a bow. Or the closeted repressed bisexual who wanted to run away with a league of badass girls and live forever with them as represented in Percy Jackson. The Hunters of Artemis are an immortal group of teenage girls who serve Artemis and just go on these badass missions for her. That is all I wanted to do. I think what's also very amazing about this series is that it gives kids permission to question God. No god is infallible, no god is so benevolent. For many neurodivergent kids, specifically ones who were raised religious or maybe still are religious to this day, it's in our very wiring to question God. Especially for autistic people, we think things very literally. So if we can't see this thing, we're always going to question it. So it is almost in our nature to doubt. It is almost in our nature to question why. Just as it was Percy's when he marched up to Mount Olympus and looked at the king of God, Zeus, in the face and told everyone there to pay their child support. We have been through things that could make us wonder if the God we taught was watching over us is even real. If God is all-seeing and all-loving and all-knowing, and I go to church every Sunday, why is he letting me go through this? Why is he just watching as I suffer? It is because of that very thing. And for the Christians in the audience, the story of Job, hello, about a guy who loved God so much, and God essentially said, how much? And took away literally everything in his life that made him happy. His farm, his wife, his children, literally every single thing in his life away. And he's like, but do you still love me now? That is a real story from the real Bible. And if you want to learn more about it in like a more critical lens, I would say Good Omens has a really good episode about it in season 2. But anyway, it is your inherent right to question God, even if people will tell you or even scare you into thinking otherwise. Percy Jackson is angry as hell at the gods for ignoring their kids, and hell yeah, you're allowed to be too. It won't immediately condemn you to an eternity of suffering. You can argue you experienced that already. That's not to say that my autism and my ADHD is all suffering. I mean, it's a huge part of it, but no. Like Percy, like the demigods, my neurodivergence makes my brain wired to understand different things, to look at the world from a unique perspective. I can't read ancient Greek, but when you catch me in hyper-focus mode, I could read an entire book within a day, which I in fact have done 5 times this month. I don't have inherent warrior instincts, if you can't tell just by everything about me. But I do have great pattern recognition, something that could either help me in my personal battles or help evade them if necessary. Being a demigod is really hard. You feel like the entire world is out to get you, and it wasn't even built for you at all. The same sentiment goes for being neurodivergent. Demigods and neurodivergency are one in the same in Rick Riordan's universe, and you cannot have one without the other. And that's the very reason why it's one of the only things from my childhood that I can't seem to let go of. That's why I still have so much love, and I still have so much passion for it. I feel as if this character, this series, this author understood me before I could understand myself. This is why my Harry Potter phase maybe lasted like a year. I never really gravitated towards Lord of the Rings. This was my shit for a reason. I know that many people with autism, ADHD, dyslexia feel this exact same way that I do. Especially if they were lately diagnosed and they're seeing the renaissance of the Percy Jackson hype now, and they're being like, in hindsight, I completely understand why I loved these books so much. Because I was seen, and I was represented, and I was understood. And that is so important. Makes you feel so good, even when you don't even know why. And that's why I wanted to make this essay. That's why I wanted to talk about this. Anyway, this was more of like a personal essay. If you didn't like it, I'll do another fucking philosophical one later. I just wanted to get this one out because I haven't done an essay in months. I haven't done an essay since July, which is crazy, and I need to work more. So if you like this, tell me who you think my godly parent is. Like, we're all 13 again. I would love that so much.